Christian, I don't know if you heard, but there's been a little bit of a lawsuit going on.
Yeah.
Paramount Warner Brothers wants to merge, and like 45 different people are bringing lawsuits against it to try to stop it. Well, today, this morning, just an hour and a half ago or something along those lines, a major development has happened. And that is this. The judge who is right now overseeing the case between the 12 states that include New York and California that are suing to stop the merger has granted a temporary restraining order against Paramount and Warner Brothers from actually finalizing their deal. Now, the reason this is significant is for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it means Paramount and Warner Brothers were looking to close the deal here very soon. They're not going to be able to do that now for at least another 2 weeks, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So basically, the statute basically says that everything now must be kept as it is. So Paramount is still an independent individual company. Warner Brothers is still an independent individual company, and that's going to be going on. Now, the reason that they had this injunction granted is laid out in this legal document that the courts put out. This is the actual ruling, the order granting a motion for temporary restraining order, or a TRO. Basically, it's highlight at the end here in the judge's reasoning. Having read the papers filed by the parties and carefully considered their arguments therein and those made at the hearing, as well as the relevant legal authority and good cause appearing, the court grants the motion of the states for a temporary restraining order, and then the judge goes into the reasons. Now, this isn't a minor thing. This is a significant thing, and the reason it's really super significant is because of the specific reasons why the judge said they were granting the temporary restraining order. Now, basically what the states are trying to do right now is, obviously they're trying to sue to stop the merger, but their current motion is, hey, Paramount and Warner Brothers should not be allowed to go through with their merger until our court trial is over. And that could take a year or more. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about in this show, if Paramount doesn't close this deal with Warner Brothers by the end of October, they are going to be subject to paying a $650 million penalty every 3 months. Every 3 months that this thing goes late, Paramount has to cut another $650 million check to Warner Brothers. If this thing goes over a year, you're talking about another 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, 1.8, 2.1 billion dollars. Roughly $6-something million a day that they're going to have to pay. So obviously Paramount didn't really want this temporary restraining order to go into effect. What is the basis for all this? Follow with me. This is going to, just follow with me for a couple of minutes. I know this is going to come across as a little dry for a minute, but believe me when I tell you, it's important to lay this foundation first before going on into the discussion. So don your academia hats, kiddies, because we're heading into the Campea classroom. All right. So the Paramount Warner Brothers merger has been temporarily halted. This is all based on something known as Section 7 of the Clayton Act. And the Clayton Act of 1914 specifically, and this is the main kind of law that gets brought up in all these types of cases. And basically it's this. Section 7 of the Clayton Act is the entire legal foundation for this lawsuit. Section 7 strictly prohibits corporations from acquiring the stock or assets of another company if the effect of that merger may be substantially to lessen competition or to tend to create a monopoly. In this specific trial, the plaintiff states, that's the New York, California, and the others, are using the Clayton Act to argue that combining two of the big five Hollywood film studios, Paramount and Warner Brothers, will create an illegal concentration of market power under the legal framework established by the Act. The court looks at metrics like the combined market share and the HHI, commonly referred to as the Herfindahl-Hirschman Index, to determine if a deal creates an unfair advantage, because the initial data indicates that a post-merger market share of 27% and a massive spike in the market concentration, that's the HHI. Without going into all the numbers, just know this. The Clayton Act says you don't want to see an HHI going over 200. The result of this merger puts it over 350. So that's a problem for the merger. It allows the judge to presume, let's try this again. In market concentration, the Clayton Act allows the judge to presume that the merger is unlawful, shifting the burden to the studios to prove that their consolidation won't harm the theatrical distribution marketplace. Now, this is the key part. Get this. Reading through the judge's order, that like I did this morning, the judge, and I'm going to be basic here, basically stated that they granted the motion because they believe it is likely that the states will win on the grounds of their case. Basically speaking, the judge said in their ruling that after looking at all the arguments that Paramount presented, that the states presented, the judge believes that the states are likely to prove that this merger will in fact violate the Section 7 of the Clayton Act. And if it does, this merger is dead. It's dead. Now, this ruling today is not the final order. It's just ordering on a temporary restraining basis. But the judge said, yeah, it looks like the states have a case and it looks like they're likely to prove it and win. Therefore, I am granting a temporary restraining order. Okay. So what's with this August 3rd date? This is just a preliminary injunction. So what the judge has now set is that in 2 weeks, Paramount and the states are going to be able to come back in and really present their case on the restraining order. And there will be one of three outcomes. Number one, the TRO goes into full force for the duration, as I move my screen here, for the duration of, why does it keep saying curation? Duration of the trial. I'm trying to type without being able to see my keyboard. Yeah. All right. So basically, that means in 2 weeks, they're going to do this hearing again after this preliminary injunction. And the first outcome that could happen is the judge says, yep, this restraining order is permanent until the full trial is done. This is the ultimate nightmare scenario for the Paramount merger. Because again, this means they cannot close by that October 30th deadline or October 31st deadline, which means every 3 months they got to cut another $650 million check, and they have no way of knowing if they're going to win this case or not. The second outcome is the TRO is lifted. This is extremely unlikely because the judge just said in their opinion piece that, yep, it absolutely looks like this is violating Section 7 of the Clayton Act. It absolutely looks like the states are going to win or have a good likelihood of winning this trial. So it seems unlikely, although it is possible, that on August 3rd, the judge will suddenly completely change their minds. It is possible, but that is one of the potential outcomes. The third potential outcome is another push. It is unlikely, but possible, that on August 3rd, the judge could hear more arguments from the two sides and then say, you know what? I think there's more debate to be had here. I need to hear more. We're going to set another hearing in 3 weeks or something like that. And then that. So basically the three options here are the TRO goes into full force, which is the nightmare scenario for Paramount. Number two is that the judge completely changes their mind upon seeing new arguments and they lift the TRO, the temporary restraining order. And the third option is that the judge could potentially just push it to yet another hearing to determine the finality of it. So there's all that. So this is not a completely unexpected thing, but it is by no means a small thing. It could have been, guys, that the judge granted the temporary restraining order, but said we're granting it on the basis of it could be possible this could be harmful to one of the sides. But instead, the judge really went at it, said we're granting this on the basis of it looks like the states are likely to succeed. That puts the onus now on Paramount to prove that their merger won't violate the Clayton Act. And by the way, I should throw this in here too. One of Paramount's main arguments in the initial hearing was that combining Paramount and Warner Brothers will create efficiencies. The judge fired back in that publicly available ruling that efficiencies is not a legal argument, and the judge quoted several cases of precedents showing that creating efficiencies does not overstep the Clayton Act. So that becomes a problem for Paramount here. Here's what I think is going to happen. And then, Christian, you've been following this as closely, if not more closely than me. And I want to hear what you say about this. But here's what I think that happens. If this TRO goes into full effect for the entire duration of the trial, I think Paramount bails. I think Paramount bails. I think they pay Warner Brothers the $7 billion breakup fee. Because if the judge rules this goes into full effect, that's telling them that the judge already thinks this merger violates the Clayton Act. And that could be really problematic moving forward. So I think that's the first main thing that could happen. The second main thing that could happen is what I've been thinking would happen all along, is that Paramount goes to the states and says, okay, what do we need to do to our deal to make you more comfortable with it? The states already said just taking CNN out of the deal doesn't do enough. But if they go to them and say, hey, what if we take out CNN and we take out HBO and we take out BET and we take out this, and essentially we just kind of take over the studio side, does that do it for you? So maybe they come to some kind of an agreement, some kind of compromise, something like that. But I do believe that the TRO goes into full effect. This is going to be really bad news for the Paramount deal, specifically because of why the judge said they're granting it. Anyway, Christian, you've been following this thing. This just got dropped on us this morning that they've granted this temporary one until August 3rd. What do you think the relevance of this is? What do you think happens on August 3rd? And what do you think ultimately happens to this whole deal at this point?
Well, first of all, I was told there'd be no math.
So this is a deal breaker.
So, I mean, looking at all of this in general, it's like, the politics side of it is really where this all comes down to, right? And when it comes to, because, as you're reading this, and I remember, and you'll probably be able to tell me more so on the difference between when Disney bought Fox, there certainly wasn't this kind of blockade, as they would say in The Phantom Menace, with this, the way that there is here. There's people who weren't happy about it, but there's certainly more of a, we can't let this happen. I think it also becomes because of what you were just mentioning, and that is not just the film and TV side of it. It's the CNN side of it. It's these other things. And I think that there's just and let's also not forget about elections that are coming up too. That's also going to put a hindrance in Paramount's stuff. If other people get nominated or other people get elected in November, that could also hurt them down the line of potentially getting this. Because my question to you, John, too, when it comes to Paramount, because you said you think that Paramount could potentially be out if this goes the way that you thought it could. I just feel like they put up such a fight in general to try to get it, the Netflix side of it and all that. And because of the relationship that they have with the White House, right? That I think that they're probably taking meetings every single day to try to figure out how to make sure that they sustain what they have right now. And I don't know if they're going to give it up, because they've been, now I'm with you. There's one thing to say, yeah, they might not just give it up because they want it, but when you're the kind of money that you just brought up that they could be potentially losing if that does, in scenario one, does indeed happen. I just think there's going to be a lot of phone calls made, and the scenario with the judge is something to me that I could see happening as well. To the one, the judge saying, I've heard arguments, maybe that actually this could happen here, and they made some concessions. We're gonna we're going to lift it and let it go through before the October thing happens. You could see that. I could see that happening because, again, the politics involved in it. And I think that there's just so much. The CNN side of it is, to me, where I think this really comes down to. They already said that they're going to release that. Is that what you said?
No. What happened was that the Attorney General of California, because it had been floated, the idea that, well, what if they drop CNN? And the Attorney General of California came out and said, nah, them dropping CNN is not going to be enough for us to stop this lawsuit. Yeah, which I thought could have been a piece of it. But here's the thing, though. With the relationship the Ellisons obviously have with the White House, that gets you by the Department of Justice. That gets you by the DOJ, which is now becoming the focal point of another lawsuit that got launched by Paramount shareholders, saying that the Ellisons broke the law by making back channel deals with the White House to get by the Department of Justice. But the Department of Justice is separate from the states, which have the standing in the court to bring a separate lawsuit and legal action. The Disney thing is an interesting one you brought up, because while there was a lot of pushback, I remember the WGA fought against it, the theater owners fought against it. There were two significant differences with the Disney situation. Number one, there were more studios at the time, so the consolidation of two of them didn't represent as big of a piece of the pie as it does today. The second big difference is Fox still exists. There's still the Fox network. There's still Fox News. There's still FS1. Fox is still a company. Disney simply bought a part of that company. Whereas with the Paramount Warner Brothers deal, they're buying everything. Not only are they combining two of the top 5 movie studios, they're also combining two of the top 5 streamers.
Right.
Not to mention the now ownership share that Paramount and Skydance is going to have in cable networks, which is one of the things that the European Union is really looking at. So the reason I think Paramount might decide to just drop this if the permanent injunction goes into effect, and I say might, is because they might then sit back and say, okay, how much money are we burning? And what is our actual likelihood of successfully winning this if the judge says, yeah, it already looks like you're violating the law? So at that point, they've got to do their own math and figure out, do we want to keep pushing this, or do we cut our losses, write a $7 billion breakup check to Warner Brothers, which is what they're going to owe Warner Brothers if they have to stop this deal, and then maybe move on. Listen, we both heard that NBC Universal might be up for sale, that there are other outlets up for sale. So maybe they go and chase greener pastures, or maybe they make it more like the Disney Fox deal, where Warner Brothers and Paramount cut out a huge chunk of Warner Brothers holdings, so Paramount doesn't get those, and maybe that makes the states happy and makes Paramount happy. I mean, I don't know. It's messy, though.
Maybe it's totally messy, and I guess that's another reason why, like, you know, the Netflix deal had a better shot, because they weren't buying like everything, and you know, it was a little bit more in the middle side of politics than on one particular side. But I just think that, for me, as you're mentioning that scenario with NBC or Universal, I'm thinking, well, what the hell happens to Warner Brothers? Because Warner Brothers clearly, Zaslav does not want to own it anymore. Let's get rid of it. And there's that rumor that they're going to potentially sell it off or break it down or chop it up. And people thought that was just kind of Chicken Little stuff, and that maybe, you know, they're just saying that because if you don't let us sell, it's going to get broken up. I think it's going to get broken up. I don't think Warner Brothers is going to sustain it. I mean, what, Netflix is going to come back in again and go, all right, we'll buy it now, but we're going to buy it for less. I don't know what happens to Warner Brothers.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Well, you just said, and here's the reason why the Netflix potential purchase represented fewer problems. If Paramount buys Warner Brothers, you are merging two of the big existing theatrical studio production companies and changing it from 2 to 1. You are basically eliminating one of the theatrical distribution companies. If Netflix had bought Warner Brothers, you would literally be bringing a new player into the theatrical business, as opposed to eliminating one of the theatrical business companies. And that's something, because Netflix is currently not in the theatrical movie production game. Right. Whereas you have Paramount, Warner Brothers, merge them, one disappears. If Netflix had bought them, one doesn't disappear. So I think that's kind of part of the math there for them on that. But again, there's a lot of money in this. It's going to be a huge thing to follow on the next couple of weeks as we head towards that August 3rd deadline. Guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? The judge today in the States versus the Paramount Warner Brothers merger has granted a temporary restraining order against Paramount and Warner Brothers completing their deal. Now there's going to be a hearing on August 3rd to determine if that injunction is going to be kept in place all the way through the entire court case, which could take 1 or 2 years to do. Whatever you guys think about this whole thing, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.